Are you thinking about making a move from the city or town to an acreage and always been wondering what exactly it takes to become an acreage owner? Well, if that's the case, today you hit the lucky draw. We're going to talk all about that here in the next little while. So stay tuned and let's get going. If you stick around to the very end, I'm going to give you a couple extra little secrets about an acreage that you really want to take a look at, because there's really a lot to consider when considering an acreage. If this is your first time to our channel, welcome. Please hit the like button and subscribe, and the notifications will come out every time we bring out a new video. So if that's the case, you'll be the first to know everything's going on in Central Alberta. My name is Jason Walls, and with my wife Shalane, we're the Walls Real Estate Group, and we like to help people move Central Alberta. So whether you're looking to move in 9 days, 90 days, or a year, that doesn't matter to us. We're here to help you and answer all your questions. So give us a shout, a text, or an email, and let us know. We love to help people just like you make the transition to Central Alberta. But in today's video, we're going to talk about acreages, specifically whether you're moving to Central Alberta or whether you already live here in one of the towns like Sylvan, Red Deer, and you want to make the move to an acreage. I'm your guy. And the reason why we're doing acreages today is because I was raised on a farm just east of Innisfell, so I know Central Alberta extremely well. And the beautiful part of Shalane and I's team is we all have our specialties. So one of my specialties is acreages and farms. I do a lot of those, as well as the residential. But one of the reasons I want to touch on acreages is because we've done a lot of acreages this year, and we've done a lot of them in the last few years. And everybody has their own unique set of questions, and they always want to know what it is they should be looking for. Well, I've done a lot of them. I've been raised on a farm, so who better qualified than me to try and answer some of those questions? Stay tuned, let's get started. So today we're going to touch on about 8 or 9 points that are really important to consider when you're thinking about moving to an acreage. Everybody wants the privacy, everybody wants to have that space to run around in, everybody maybe wants to have a spot for their business or their animals. There's many different reasons why people want to move into acreages. They may want to grow their own market gardens. But today what we're going to focus on is just the things to take a look at that are really important that you may or may not be aware of. And so let's start with number 1, shall we? The first one we want to always take a look at is zoning and bylaw use. So there's several different zones for acreages. They range from the most common one for larger acreages is zoned agriculture, and the smaller ones are more country residential. And there's lots of subdivisions that have acreages of 1 to 2 acres, maybe 1 to 3 acres. And those are usually country residential. And ones that are a little bit more on their own or a little bit larger than maybe 3 to 5 acres and then that above is zoned agriculture. And so you really have to make sure when you're looking at acreages what the zoning is, because there are restrictions more so on country residential than there are in agriculture. On agriculture, you can have animals, you can run a business. You still obviously need to get county approval, but on country residential, they're much more limited to what you're able to do. They're more just like if you're looking for a bigger home or a place for the kids to play or just to get out of the city. Those are more for country residentials. So as I mentioned, it's really important to understand what the zoning and bylaw is. It really does. If you want to, for another example, is if you want to build a new shop or other additional buildings, you have to make sure that you know which zoning it is. And again, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, the agriculture zoning is much more broad. And so if you've got bigger plans, you might want to look at one that is zoned agriculture. The second thing we always want to take a look at is water. So when you get onto acreages, there's very seldom is it ever municipal water. It is in some cases, and it is in some subdivisions, but mostly it's wells. And so you really want to know what the water quality is and the volume of water, depending on what your volume is going to be or what your requirements are going to be. So for example, if you've got some animals or you're going to grow a market garden or a tree farm or things like that, you might want to ensure that your gallons per minute out of your wells will meet those requirements. Sometimes there's more than one well. Some of the acreages, the wells were drilled years ago or the pumps are old. So it's really important when you're making an offer on an acreage to be aware of what the water quality and volume is. And so lots of times when you're writing the offer, that will be part of the conditions is to do the water tests, and they will actually do a flow on the well as well. They'll usually pull the pump up and just see how old it is and what kind of condition it's in, as well as what the flow rates are. So it's really important to do that. When you're getting a mortgage, a lot of times the lenders will actually request this. So it is going to be brought up and it is expected, but it's something that, if you haven't lived on an acreage or on a farm, that you maybe aren't aware of what it is that you need to put in there. So that's a tip that's really important. So tip number 3 goes kind of along with the water, which is in your utilities, is a septic tank. So when you're looking at acreages, especially the older homes, you want to take a look at and have it inspected is your septic tank. And then you need to find out if it's got a field or a mound, or, as we've come across a few times this year, an open discharge. So there's lots of different variations that go along with the sewer system. And so one, you want to make sure that that's one of the conditions of your offer, is to have the septic tank sucked out and inspected. And then you need to have your field inspected, if there is a field, as well as the mound or the open discharge. So some of the open discharges, it actually just does discharge onto the ground, and it has been grandfathered in on some of the older acreages, but you're never allowed to do that on new construction. So the most common way that the septic systems are now is a tank and mound. And so on most acreages that are in the newer range in the last 5 years, they'll mostly have the septic and the mound. But like I mentioned, if you're looking at some older ones, and there are a lot of older acreages in this area, then you want to make sure you have that. So I don't always like to quote costs, but if you have to replace a tank and a field and a mound, it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. So you really want to make sure that when you're looking at an acreage, if you fall in love with one, that's a part of the condition. Because one, it could end up costing you a lot of money in the short term or long term. And if we find out at the time through the inspections that it is nearing the end of its life expectancy, then that's something you can either budget for, or we go back and we negotiate with the sellers and try and get you a better deal. So that's a really, really big one. And again, it's things that people don't usually think about if they've lived in the cities or towns, because that's just something you don't have to worry about there in town when it's all the municipal. So in a nutshell, take a look, find out the age, try and get as much information from the seller, talk to the county about what's allowed and not allowed, and make sure that you're educated on that. And we'll do that with you as well when we go shopping for the acreages. Tip number 4, property access. So when we're looking at acreages in the summertime, it's not always such a big deal, but you really do have to look at, how close you are to the main roads. Do you have a long laneway to your acreage? Are you going to make plans for when it snows? Are you going to have, available a tractor or a quad with a blade, or some neighbors that are going to come and do that for you? So when we look at acreages in the wintertime, we don't sell as many in the wintertime. It's more common to sell an acreage in the summertime just because of the access and things. But you have to look at things like lawnmowers. How far away are you from the road? The county will always plow your road. Unless it's a dead end road, then sometimes they don't. But that's something that you always want to take a look at too. But when it's not 40 below and the wind is blowing, these acreages that are a long ways off the road, they go, oh, it's so beautiful for privacy. And it really is, but it can come at a price when the snow is blowing and your road's drifted in and you're supposed to be getting off to work and you can't get out of your yard. So there's just some hidden costs with those acreages that you do have to budget for, and you have to make sure that you have some of those things available to you, or that you're going to be looking at purchasing them after you have your acreage. Unless sometimes there's some neighbors that you can make arrangements for and they'll come do it for you. But that is things that you don't think about in town, but you do have to. So always look at the accessibility, both summer and winter, and things to consider for sure, because those can add up as well. The next tip we always look at is utilities and internet. So if you're buying an existing acreage, then lots of times you've already got the gas, you've already got the power, you've already got the well and the septic put in. But if you're buying, for example, a new piece of land and you have to budget for all these things, that really adds up fast. So when you're getting the power and the gas in, those companies, some of them charge a flat fee and some of them charge a fee per kilometer or per meter. I'm not exactly sure how some of those work. Every municipality has it differently, but those costs add up really quickly. So if you're buying yourself a new one, then that's thing to take into consideration. Now, if you're all of a sudden working from home, which a lot of people are since the pandemic, then you need to make sure you have internet capabilities. If you're running a couple of high-speed computers and you've got a lot of Zoom meetings and that kind of stuff, you need to have good internet. So make sure that in those areas that we're looking at, we'll test that out. A lot of people now are starting to use Starlink and things like that, but it is really important to make sure that the internet especially can meet the requirements that you're looking for, because there's nothing worse than the dreaded circle of death when you're trying to make a connection or something like that. So we always make sure we walk the perimeters of the property and with my clients, and if something's not working, then we have to do a little bit of research to make sure that the capabilities can be met. Or sometimes that's a deciding factor, because you can't do your business if you can't do your business. So something to consider for sure. So the next thing you want to consider is bylaws and regulations. So everybody thinks once you get out in the country on an acreage, you're allowed to do whatever you want. And that's just simply not the case. So every county has their own set of rules and regulations and bylaws. So if you're looking to do anything other than just live on a residence, if you're trying to start a business or run a business, then it's really important that we reach out to the counties and ask those questions directly. And we never want to assume the answers. And most of the counties are really good about getting back to us, and they will be able to answer all the questions, and you just give them an idea of what you're proposing. And most of them are really good to work with, but it's just something that you want to definitely take into consideration, because we don't want to get you your property and then you want to start a business or expand your business that you had maybe in town that you need to have more storage or add a building or park some equipment, that kind of stuff. And if that kind of conflicts with what the bylaws are, then you've got some issues and challenges with the county. So we really try to make sure we do all the background work so there aren't any of these surprises afterwards. And so it's really important to consider that aspect of it. The next factor we want to take a look at is environmental factors. So again, if you're looking to do things on the farm, you want to look at the soil quality. If you're trying to grow some things, you want to look at whether or not you're in a floodplain, or if you're close to rivers, things like that that might rise. And so there's lots of issues with, not every year, but every few years, or every 10 or 20 or 30 years. Sometimes if you're close to water, there can be some flood issues. So you really want to take a look, and the county's got some great accessibilities on flood maps and floodplains, so you can do some research on that. The next point I'd like to do is communities and amenities. So whenever people are looking for acreages, one of the first questions, two questions I ask, not necessarily more important than the other, but one is budget and two is proximity. So we really want to make sure there's most people, they don't, and again, it depends if you work remotely, and it depends maybe if you work away, but the accessibility to either work or schools or churches or hospitals, that kind of stuff always comes into consideration. So we always like to say, what's your comfortable driving time? Some people it's 20 minutes, some people it's 30, some people it's an hour. So we really want to be cognizant of what your comfortability is with the drive time. Because believe it or not, especially with kids and everything else, it might not seem like a long drive when you're driving out someplace for like half an hour to your place, but you consider doing that drive every day, or sometimes it's 2 times a day, depending on what's going on. And so that really adds up. And so I always tell people, make sure that you're comfortable with the drive, make sure that you understand what you're getting into, and you want to make sure the communities that you're by do have everything you're looking for. And the nice part with Central Alberta is all our communities have so many amenities, but not all of them have things. Like, for example, Sylvan doesn't have a hospital, but it's got healthcare facilities for emergencies and things like that, and clinics. But if you're looking for a hospital, then you're looking for Lacombe or Innisfail or Red Deer. So things like that. But as far as like grocery stores, Red Deer's only Costco. So if you need to have a Costco, you have to live somewhere closer. Just examples like that. So just remember that, when we're taking a look at properties, you got to consider that, because it does really make a difference in the long run. Because you don't want to be running around back and forth all the time looking for things and spending all your time instead of enjoying your acreage driving. The next point that I always like to have clients consider is future plans and developments. So if they find a beautiful acreage that's, say, on a quarter section of land, and there's nothing else there, then I say, we got to really make sure you check with the counties and find out if there's any future plans, Or sometimes there's subdivisions with acreages and you want to know what the restrictions are or what's maybe being planned in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And sometimes that's not an impact on people, but other times it is. And so it's always really important just to consider what might be going on, not currently, but I'm sure there's people that had acreages where you're moving to that years ago never thought that it would grow to where it is now. So there's a lot of popularity with acreages, and I can totally appreciate where people are coming from when they want to move out of the city. And so it's, more and more people are trying to do that. And so we're starting to see these little subdivisions pop up of maybe 1 acre, 2 acre, and there'll be like 14 or 20 acreages within a small subdivision. And those are really nice. You don't get a lot of space, but you get a lot more space than you do in town. And you get a little bit more privacy. So those are really gaining in popularity as well. So as I mentioned, if you're looking to buy or sell an acreage in Central Alberta, give us a call. We'd love to help you do the move. We'd like to help you do the research and give you the tips and tricks and pros and cons of each area that we've found, because we really do a lot of acreages as well as farms. And so we feel we're very qualified. So give either Shalane or I a call. We're both available. We'd love to help you out. So as we'd mentioned before, whether you're looking to move in 9 days, 90 days, or 1 year, let us know. We're going to be here for you. We'll do the research. We have the experience, so you don't have to worry about it. Give us a call or a text or an email anytime. And if you haven't yet, please do like and subscribe and get the bell notifications of our next video. And as always, we really sincerely request this. If this information is helpful and is helping you in any way, please leave some comments. We love to reach out. We love to hear back. We want to know if there's other topics that you guys would like to hear that might be something that you're wondering about, because chances are if you are, so is somebody else. So until next time, hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, and we'll talk soon.